So, my bus is sold, and honestly, it feels really strange saying that. This is my 68 Bedford, Selma. I actually lived in her for 3 years, and I absolutely loved it. She wasn't just a vehicle to me, she was my little home on wheels, my freedom, my adventure, and a really important part of my life. Since then, I've had her rented out to other people, and well, let's just say they haven't necessarily loved her quite the way that I do. So I've had plenty of scrubbing to do. And now, after being for sale for quite some time, someone has finally come along who wants to make her their own. And suddenly I have to get her properly cleaned and ready to go. Now, if you've been following my journey, you'll know that I deal with chronic fatigue on the daily, and a lot worse in winter. So cleaning an entire bus isn't something I can just knock over in one day. I can't spend 8 hours scrubbing and cleaning and then just carry on with everything else. It doesn't work. I have to pace myself. I have to listen to my body. And sometimes that means doing something for a short period of time, stopping, resting, and then coming back to it later. So this job took me 4 days. 4 days of short stints. 4 days of stopping when I needed to, having a nap if I had to, and 4 days of slowly bringing my old girl, Selma, back to the condition where I felt happy handing her over to someone else. And I have to admit, there were definitely moments when I wondered if I was ever going to get it all done. But as I worked through it, I started thinking about how much this bus has been part of my life. I lived in her for 3 years. I had adventures in her. I loved her. I worried about her. I've fixed her. I've cleaned her many, many times. And now I'm having to let her go. And isn't that just a little bit like life? We make plans, we get comfortable with where we're at, and then life throws us a curveball. Sometimes we choose to change. Sometimes a change simply arrives and says, okay, we're doing this now. So come along with me as I get my 1968 Bedford ready for her next chapter. And I'll tell you a little bit about what this whole experience has made me think about along the way. So this is where it all started. The bus needed a really good clean before it could go to its new owner. And when I first looked at everything that needed doing, I'll admit, it was a little overwhelming. There's something about looking at a big job and seeing everything at once that can make you want to walk away before you've even started. But I've learned with chronic fatigue, I can't approach things that way. I can't look at the entire job and think, right, I've got to get all of this done in a day. Because if I do that, I'll either push myself too hard or I'll get overwhelmed by how much there is to do. So I broke it down, one little job at a time, one area at a time. And when I felt myself running out of energy, I stopped. Not when everything is finished, when I needed to stop. And that's a really important distinction. First day was really about getting started and seeing what I could realistically accomplish. I'd do a short stint of cleaning, then I'd take a break. Sometimes I'd sit down for a while. Sometimes I'd leave the bus completely and go and do something else or nothing. And then if my energy came back enough, I'd go back and do another little bit. It's not particularly exciting. It's certainly not the kind of cleaning montage you see where someone starts with a disaster and 3 minutes later everything is magically spotless. Real life doesn't work like that for me. There were breaks, there were stops, there was looking at the clock and thinking, yep, that's enough for now. And I had to be okay with that, because I've learnt the hard way that if I push myself beyond what my body can manage, I don't just lose the rest of the day. I can lose the next day or 2, sometimes longer. So pacing isn't about being lazy. It's actually about being strategic with the energy that I have. But by the second day, I could already see the difference. And that's when I started feeling like I was getting a little bit more motivation. I clean something and think, oh, that looks so much better. Then I wanted to keep going, and that's another trap. I've learned to avoid going and going, because when you finally feel like you're getting somewhere, it's very tempting to think, I'm feeling okay, I'll just keep going. But feeling okay doesn't necessarily mean that I've got unlimited energy, because I don't. So I kept reminding myself, slow and steady wins the race. There was no prize for finishing this in one day. The bus wasn't going anywhere without me. And the goal wasn't to prove how much I could do. The goal was to get it ready without completely burning myself out. By the time day 3 came around, the transformation was becoming much more obvious. And this is where I started feeling quite proud of myself. Not because I'd done something extraordinary, but because I knew what it had taken for me to get there. 4 days might not sound like a huge amount of time to clean something, but when you're doing it in short bursts because your energy is limited, every little bit counts. And mate, it was not easy getting up each morning to carry on. I think that's something that we can forget. We tend to celebrate the big achievements, the finished project, the before and the after and the end result, but we don't always see all the tiny steps that happened in between. The times you had to stop, the times you had to rest, the times you wondered if you'd actually get there, those little steps mattered too. By day 4, I was getting into the little bits, thinking about the outside also, and I could finally see the finish line. There were still things to do, but it was no longer that huge, overwhelming job I'd looked at on day 1, but I was determined that the new owner was going to have a spick and span sparkling bus. It had become a collection of little jobs that I'd slowly worked my way through. And eventually, I got there. 4 days, not 1, not 2, but 4. And I was okay with that. Actually, I was proud of that, because I didn't have to push myself into the ground to achieve it. I listened to my body, and I stopped when I needed to. I started again when I had enough energy, and that's something I want to remind everyone else dealing with fatigue of any sort or any sort of limited energy. You don't have to do everything today. Just make a plan. I did it one little section at a time, and then there was the other part of all this. The fact that the bus was going. My darling Selma, my 68 Bedford. For so long it had been for sale, with me thinking she's never going to sell. I look at it and I think, maybe one day someone will buy it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to love her and I'm going to look after her. And then months went by. I'd almost become used to the idea that nobody was going to buy her. So when somebody actually came along and said that they wanted her, it caught me a little bit off guard. Because it's funny how you can think you're ready for something until it actually happens. You can mentally prepare yourself for a change, but when the moment finally arrives and you do have a love bond with your mobile home, you realise there's an emotional side to it and that you hadn't really considered it. This bus has been part of my life for nearly 4 years. She's been part of my plans. She's been a roof over our heads in storms and crazy situations. She's represented my freedom, my adventure, and possibility, and probably a few headaches too along the way. Some of those alcohol-related, and the rest of them stress with buses. And now someone else gets to make their own memories with her. And I think that's what this whole experience has really made me think about. Life throws curveballs all the time. You can have a plan. You can think you know what's coming next. You can have an idea of where your life is heading, and then something happens that completely changes the direction. Sometimes we fight those changes. Sometimes we're scared of them. Sometimes we don't have any choice but to adapt. Sometimes when we look back later, we realise that the curveball actually took us somewhere that we needed to go. If you enjoyed hanging out with me off the edge with Tracy, please like and subscribe and check out what's coming next.